Okay, and with that, I guess we can turn to the highlight of the night, which would be the bridge itself.
The presentation.
The presentation.
What we're going to do is I have spent a little bit of time putting together a pretty short presentation on the history of the bridge. Then we're going to have several residents of the town come up and just talk about what it was like living with the bridge and life with the bridge in town. I want to start by thanking some people who helped me on this. Rich Ruby has, I believe, joined us tonight. Rich wrote a paper back in 1998 at Columbia Green about the history of the bridge. So I've used that for most of my information. It made this thing a lot easier. Dan Souza has been my intrepid researcher on a lot of this. I'd like to thank Larry Fetterman and Gail Dedrick for photos that we've used in here, and Ron Dombrowski just for being Ron and doing what Ron does. You know? So, okay, let's see if we can start up here. This is the presentation tonight. Actually, when we talk about the swinging bridge, we talk about 4 bridges. The first was a fixed bridge built in, 1883, that should be, to 1896. That one lasted 2 to 3 years. It was then replaced by a second fixed bridge in 1898, lasted about 10 years. The first swinging bridge was built in 1911, lasted for 17 years. And then the second swinging bridge was built in 29 and lasted for 82 years. Let's talk about the first one. Late 1800s. It was just when the Catterskill Hotel arrived in 1881, so we had the Catterskill Hotel and the Mountain House. In 1882, the railroad to Palenville Station was completed. In 1892, the Otis Elevating Railway was completed. And so Palenville was a jumping joint around here, but there was a problem. Here's an overhead view, and we're going to be seeing this again and again, so just to orient you, this is Malden, what was called Malden Turnpike, and used to go all the way over and join 23A, which is the yellow line through there. Here's the triangle. Here's Bogart Road. Here's Woodland. So that's what we're going to be looking at. There were 2 ways to get across the Catterskill Creek. One was the Malden Turnpike Bridge, which is actually still there. The other was Tannery Bridge down here. The problem was that we're zoomed in now. We've lost Malden Bridge. We're a little bit tighter on the town because I wanted to show you the locations of the don't know why that's not showing. In any case, the problem was that we've got, for example, Central House over here. We've got Pine Grove in here. We've got Arlington up here. We've got Chestnut House down here. We've got the Fernwood up here. And there was no way to get across except the Tannery Bridge. And I measured it, and if you took off from Garrison's, right in front of Garrison's here at 23A, and went over to Mill Lane, it's about 0.1 mile, about 1/10 of a mile walk. This way is 2/3 of a mile. So the only way to get across at that time was the Tannery Bridge. So the idea was to put a bridge in here. And that happened in 1893. Grover Cleveland's president. There's a World's Fair out in Chicago, the Columbian Exposition. Women can vote in Colorado only. And the Panic of 1893. For some reason, Palenville seemed to build its bridges when there were economic downturns. I don't know quite what the story was. But fixed bridge number 1 was erected that year. And this is the picture we think may be fixed bridge number 1. We're not sure if it's 1 or 2. What's interesting about this is it actually goes over to there's one side of the bridge with the stone under it. The other side is actually over here. This is a middle support. And the picture is dated 1895, which is why we think it may be the first bridge. That one lasted 2 years. And the interesting thing about it was approximately 50 feet long. It was built by the Palenville Village Improvement Society. on the land of C.L. Goodwin, who owned Chestnut Lawn, which was on the other side of the bridge. But the path came through Pine Grove. And here you can see basically Route 23A, Tannery Bridge down here, Mill Road. And what they did was to put the bridge in here with a walkway in here and then continuing out through the Pine Grove land to approximately Bogart. It's slightly off Bogart. Let me show you on a modern property map. This is the Rodriguez piece of land, which was part of the Chestnut Grove land, which is all of this. But you'll notice he owned the other side of the creek also. So the bridge itself, both abutments were located on Rodriguez land. This is the Pine Grove holding. So in order to get the bridge, and this is out of time sequence, it's a much later postcard, it's from probably in the 20s, but you can see an entrance here off 23A, Pine Grove, the walkway all the way up, and here's the bridge located up in this area, and this was the dance hall for Pine Grove, which was located on this side. And what this bridge allowed was people to go from the other side, people who were staying at the resorts on the other side of the stream, to come across to the dance hall at Pine Grove or to Main Street over in Palenville, and vice versa. Okay, that one lasted until March of 1896. McKinley's now elected president. Ford launches its first vehicle. Stars and Stripes Forever is written, and in March, there was a 33-inch snowstorm, which melted, and the bridge went away. 98, they built a new one. That year, New York City was formed, Spanish-American War began, they erected the bridge, and this is just 3 years before Rowena School opens. So this bridge would become the route for all the kids who were on the other side of the stream to get to school, coming across to Rowena. Here's a picture, we think, of the second bridge. Again, you can see the support that was out in the middle of it. This is not a swinging bridge, it was just a flat structural bridge. Lasted till about 1910, and people aren't quite clear on when it went down. Teddy Roosevelt's president, Oklahoma becomes a state. New York City bans women from public smoking, and it was destroyed by a flood, and it's not quite clear when it was destroyed. A year later, Taft's president, Triangle Shirtwaist Fire, groundbreaking for Fenway Park, and Swing Bridge number 1 is erected. Now, this one is raised up now, 10 feet above water level, with steel cables, iron rods, and cross bracing, and a wooden plank walkway. And at the either end of it were cast concrete towers. And this is probably the classic view of it from the postcard. You can see these were cast as one piece. That's a 1911 engraved in the top of it. The picture is probably a little bit later than 1911. We do have another picture of it, which is dated actually 1913. And this is one of my favorite pictures of the bridge, just sort of showing how the bridge was actually a draw. What people would come down to the bridge and take pictures on the bridge, and was a fairly major attraction in Palenville. Okay, now this is actually over here tonight, and it's from the Palenville Library. It's kind of an interesting document. It is the electrical plan for the town of, the lighting plan for the town of Palenville. And to orient you again, this time we're reversed, south and north and south. Here's the triangle. Here's Main Street coming down and eventually crossing down here at the Malden Avenue. This is actually done in 1927. It's a little bit cut off there at the edge. But the reason I brought this is it's kind of interesting. Note that at the time this was drawn, here goes 32, what is now 32A comes down and becomes Happy Street. which is Pine Avenue. Here, there was no 32A. 32A is not built until the late 20s because everything was coming from Catskill to Palenville as opposed to coming up off the thruway exit in Saugerties. So they built 32A here, and you can see here they've drawn, and this was where the Helena Bridge would be located eventually. The other thing that's interesting about this is Bogart Road, and if you look here, this is Tannery Bridge, Mill Road, coming up and joining again Malden Turnpike, and here we have a bridge. That's the swinging bridge, and there's an electric light at either end of the swinging bridge. It was treated as a thoroughfare in Palenville. It was part of the electrical system for the lighting of the streets of Palenville. This one lasts until 1928. Coolidge is president. Amelia Earhart flies across the Atlantic. Elliot Ness leads the Chicago Prohibition Unit, and they get hit with what is known as the Great Flood. In 1928, there was 27 inches of snow in March, more than 10 inches of rain in June, and more than 8 inches of rain in July. So that thing just got washed out that year. 29, it was rebuilt. Now here again, 1929, Great Depression begins. We build a bridge. St. Valentine's Day Massacre. Herbert Hoover's president. This one is going to be smaller. It is narrower than the 1911, the original bridge, swinging bridge. The stone towers are not cast completely around, set up on the stone piers, and there's a distinctive sign at the top of the bridge, which is what you see in many of the pictures of it. This bridge was erected by the people of Palenville, $25 for misusing the bridge. It would be the most durable of the four bridges. It would survive for 82 years, and it was maintained by the people of Palenville. And in fact, there is an extant photograph, and Rich, correct me if I'm wrong, is this you?
No, the first guy, I think I'm the first guy right there.
We're down here?
I think so.
Number one, anybody else, who else is in that picture that you know of? Anybody?
I can't even remember that. Very old picture, I'm surprised it's in color.
They would periodically go out and restore the bridge, get it back into function. 2011, August 21st, Hurricane Irene. 11.6 inches of rain fell in Tannersville, and it set the New York State record for the most rain in 24 hours in the history of New York State. And it destroyed Swinging Bridge number 2. And that's what's there now. This is viewed from the other side of the bridge looking in. And so that is where we stand right now. And at this point, what I would like to do is invite the group of people that we'd talk with about this. Gene Edwards, Betty, Gigante, Rich Ruby. If you would come up, and Jill, would you lead the conversation?
Thanks so much, Crane. I'm kind of wondering if we haven't built the bridge because we wanted economic good times. That may not have been something we wanted to bring up. Now, I mean, we've seen maps, we've seen the signs, we've now seen the history, but the thing that we miss, the piece that we're missing, is the people that remember it and the stories that really flesh out what the bridge was to everyone. And so we've mentioned that it was a way of getting from one side to the other. Betty, is that what you remember of the bridge? I mean, which side were you on when you started?
I was on Catskill Avenue on the other side of the bridge.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. I know when I was a little girl, I would just always look. We had a Betty stand right in the corner there.
A what stand?
Betty stand, that was on the corner of Mill Road and Woodstock.
Was that a store?
It was a little store outside, you know.
It had this tree
I would
growing
walk
through
over
it.
down. You remember it still, right?
Yeah, you could ride your bike up and
Ride
put
your
your
bicycle, right?
arm on the
I would
thing.
do that. Yeah. I was 7 or 8 years old. You were allowed to run by yourself at that day. You know, my grandmother would let me ago, but I would always have to go to Betty stand or something, and ride my bike up Mill Road, and, or walk up and go over the swinging bridge and come back down the other side. It was just the way, it was just something that was there. And then when I was a teenager, I was thinking about, we had on Malden Avenue, there was J.C. Johnny's, and then on 23A, right on the corner of Bogart Road, there was the Greasy Spoon. And that was our trek every day. We'd go either to J.C. Johnny's and then we'd see nothing going on there, we'd go back again. I'm told I was 15, 16 years old, so it was 1950. We'd go back and forth, over to see what was going on over on 23A and J.C. and Swinging Bridge, and go back over again. And we lived at Pine Grove, always. We lived at Pine Grove all summer long, and that was.
So that was your hangout place?
That was our whole hangout place, yeah. Never thought I'd lived in that Arlington house, but I remember the people always coming down from the Arlington house, and you had to walk across the bridge, because they had children. You had to cross the bridge to get over to the other side, so the kids would go down into the creek and go swimming.
So you remember a lot of the people that were staying on the north side, in those like Pine Grove and some of those places, and they take their kids. You go across the bridge in order to go to the creek.
You had to go across the bridge. You couldn't just go down the hill there. You'd have to jump over places, and so they would have to walk up the other side.
So when you were a little girl, about what year were you talking about?
What year what?
What year was that when you were a little girl?
This is where it gets tricky.
I think I was probably about 12 when we started. I mean, I could go, I used to go swimming by Helena Falls when I was, because we lived closer there when I was a little bit younger. But then when I was about 12, we started hanging out at Pine Grove.
So what year?
They want to know when you were 12.
I was 12 in 1952. Okay? I know the years.
Yeah.
So it was just great. I mean, I was never up here in the winter time, so I don't know, what.
But
that's
the
when
summer, that's when
I'm sure it was a
things
part
are
of
wrong.
everybody's life, it was something that was there. And even when I moved up here with my own kids, we could walk right down the back of the house, go down the hill there, walk across the bridge, and just go down, have the kids.
So the last time you remember using the bridge, you're living on this side, and so you were using it to go to the other side for what reason?
The last time I used the bridge, I had my granddaughter Ava, who was probably 5 at the time, or 4. She's 9 now. And I was watched her in the daytime. We would walk down there, because she loved to stand on the bridge and throw rocks. So that was fun. That was almost every single day. We would do that over there. We'd go for a walk around. It was probably, but I went a lot. I mean, when my kids were little, when my grandkids were little, I took them all down there all the time, and they would swim underneath the bridge. There was very low water there, and then they'd always want to go across the bridge, we'd go back and forth. So, just so much a part of your life. I'm sure for everybody, just a part of your life.
And Rich, we've got we have evidence that you worked on it even.
Yeah,
Yes,
my name's
you
Rich
did.
Ruby. I don't know if anybody remembers me, but I used to live here back in my younger days. My family.
But you also had Circle W.
Yes, my family owned the Circle W, and we moved to Palenville. I think they bought the store in 1970. So I was probably 6th grade, somewhere in that neighborhood when they bought the store. And at that time, Palenville was still a community of tourism. All of these houses that you hear about, the Chestnut Lawn, the Central House, they all were full every summer, and all these boarders would come up and they would spend their vacations in Palenville, either a couple of weeks or the whole summer. All of these places kept this town going, and everybody, like that he was saying, there was different spots around town that people wanted to get to, and that bridge was the main way for, if you weren't driving, that was the easiest way to go. And those, all through that area, all those swimming holes were filled every nice day. I mean, that's the first thing I remember moving up here, was going to those swimming holes. And then when I saw that bridge, I was like, oh my God, this is the coolest thing. And every day, even if you didn't really have to, people went across that bridge just because it was there. It was just that cool. But, you know, that was a different era. And right after, probably in the mid to late 70s, the houses started losing business, the Pine Grove closed, and then things started shrinking up, and then it became a different kind of community. I mean, we still had the tourism, but it was a different kind of tourism, because those people would come up and they would spend the entire time here. And a lot of the people that came after that were people that used to come to stay in those houses. Then they came back and bought houses, brought their families, and said, "We love this here. We're gonna stay here." But then, around that time, that's when it started changing, because now we have cars. We don't need that road, or we don't need that shortcut. And everybody, I mean, one of the things you can notice now, like I love to fly fish, but I'm not sure if there's a way I can legally get to the water right now, because every property along that creek has a posted sign. You know, I mean, you can't get to the water anymore legally that I know of. And that's pretty much the same case with the bridge. I mean, the bridge is there, or was there, but both sides are posted.
So you said that your family owned the store in 1970,
Yeah, they bought the store in 1970, yeah.
and do you remember people coming across the bridge to the store?
Oh, absolutely. It was a major thoroughfare. I mean, anybody who lived on that side of the road in nice weather, well, mostly in nice weather, because they came through everything, but in nice weather, that was the way they came. I mean, that road along the side of the Pine Grove, I always thought it was a road. It was never paved. You know, it was always a dirt path, but it was just always a part of it. I didn't even realize that it was a part of the Pine Grove house. I just thought it was a road that cut down there.
Eugene?
I assumed it was the same, like you said, it was a road. I thought, my whole life, I thought it was a road as well. I thought it was a road that divided the two properties.
Right.
I thought.
No. Yeah, I think we kind of, I don't know.
It
Maybe
doesn't
after I
seem like
moved
to
up
me.
here in 1970, maybe I realized then that it was part of.
I mean, I was younger then. I never
Well,
actually
I can't
assumed that
remember.
somebody would own a road. I mean, to me, it was like
The road.
everybody in town walks on that road. You can't
Yeah.
own this. Just like, you know, you argue now when you're standing in the middle of the stream, that's not your property. Your property's over there. How could you own the stream? But that's another fight.
What's the earliest you remember?
Oh, I
A baby?
was bored with it, so I don't know. My generation, it's a good thing it went in order.
Yeah.
Yeah.
My generation was probably the end of, I think, people kind of abusing it. I mean, I grew up in the 80s, 90s, where BMX was getting, everybody had BMX bikes, and since I was able to ride my bike uptown, I would go from Malden Avenue. I lived right behind the swing bridge on Malden, right on the corner of Mill Road in Malden. And my mom would send me to the store to go to Circle W to go get the donuts on Sunday and the paper and a gallon of milk, and I'd ride back on my bicycle and cross that bridge. But when I was a kid, the bridge had a pole in the middle. I don't know when that was.
Are we
installed.
videotaping this?
Yes.
You know what?
I was gonna say, I know how that pole
You know-
disappeared, but I know how that pole disappeared.
I know how they got there too.
Well, I know.
I was told it's for keep snowmobilers.
Right. I think at one
There were
time.
a couple of snowmobiles when the very early 70s, when the first couple of years I was up here, a couple of snowmobiles went over that swinging bridge.
Oh.
Come up on our property in the back, and that's, I think, there was a German woman on Chestnut Lawn at that time, and she was having a fit, and that's why I think she was the one who had somebody put the poles up.
Jack Griffin from Griffin's Irish House they had a committee similar to this. It was like the Palenville Civic Association. And what they did was they did, on a lower key than, they did little things like that. And at one point, they put that pole in to block it off or whatever. Certain unnamed youths in the dead of night.
So I had to take my bicycle, and that was the biggest pain in the ass, was to get my handlebars. I always get off until I got good, where I was able to pop a wheelie through without even putting my foot down. So that was the goal of as kids, who was the best, who can make it without putting your foot down, from all the way from going down that hill hopping through that thing, riding along those boards, pulling a wheelie without getting your tire stuck in before you guys fixed it, I guess. Because we used to get our tires stuck all the time, and if we front tire gets stuck in there, you're
In the interest of safety, some good-minded citizens.
So many a time, my front tire would get stuck, and I would
go.
go right over the handlebars and
See?
on the bridge.
It was for his own
I
good.
remember- Oh yeah, plenty of times. All my buddies
Now,
have
I
three.
know that there's some great family pictures in town of people, like getting married and getting their picture taken on the bridge, or group shots or anything. Can you remember anything like that in your family? Do you ever-
Every year we would take up my children and all my nieces and nephews. We'd always take pictures of hanging out on the bridge. And always on Halloween we would do it. We have thousands of pictures.
See, I grew up in a time before everybody had a cell phone, and most of what we wanted was deniability. we didn't photograph everything we were doing back then.
Yes, I used it also as a shortcut. I would never drive. I hated driving.
For the record,
all the way around.
she's related to some of my co-conspirators, but I'm not naming names.
Now, one other person that was going to be here tonight is Patty Ferrara, and she just had some hand surgery, and so she wasn't up to it. But she talks about going to Rowena, and to her, that was just the path to the school. Is that anything that any of you? It's like we've got a little gap of who was here
Yeah,
when,
it is,
you know?
Rowena?
Yeah, the
get
path
to
that
school.
she would take to go to school every day over the
Oh,
bridge.
she lived in Palenville? I don't
Yeah,
know.
she was
Oh.
over on Malden.
Yeah, I was when we moved up. I was beyond the age of the Rowena, because I'd only went up to fifth grade. It went from
Fifth
kindergarten
grade,
to
yeah, I
fifth
think it
grade.
stopped at third grade when Brian was in third grade.
Now, in that picture when you were doing the repair,
Mm-hmm.
was that just an annual thing, or what was?
No, what
was
happened
one
was that one was.
polishing the pole or something?
Well, no. What happened was around the time that I wrote the paper, which I think was closer to '95. I was taking another class, a technical writing class, and I had to do a survey and something else. So as part of this, I put a survey out in the store and a couple other places, just about the bridge. Because for the paper I did it was just a casual local history class, and they said find something.
cool.
They said find something in your town that you think is going to be gone, and just try to document it for the history class. And that's what this paper was because the bridge was getting in really bad shape. And so I wrote about it, and then for the next class, I just tried to see if there was any community interest in getting it fixed. So what we did was we put the survey out, we had a meeting like this, put out coffee cans at the Circle W and at Don's and Tony Springs, and that's how we raised the money. We never actually thought of doing anything like you guys are doing, like legal. That was never really my strong suit.
Wasn't needed.
No.
Yeah.
So what we did was we collected money. We got some donors. We got the guys from Fear Brothers down in Saugerties. They donated all new cable for the bridge, and we bought the lumber. And then just a Saturday, we just met and did it. And
So you put new cables up at that time?
yeah,
So in 95 there was new cables and stuff.
yeah, it was all new cable. It
Where
was,
are the cable now? It's like gone, it's washed away? Is it?
I think it's all
Kind
gone.
of, some of it's still strung there. Is there any cable left, Dan? Do you know any cable left?
The cable was cut by the town that was in the creek. It was wrapped up, and before I purchased the property, someone helped himself to it, so I believe someone scrapped it.
Yeah.
Because at
But-
that point, that's when scrap metal was that time, so.
But somebody that was involved in the committee went around and actually, I don't know if he was working there, but he mentioned it to them, and they said, "Oh, we have all this cable if you want it." And it was like, "Really? Cool." So we had all new cable, we had all lumber from Dunn's, and we spent a day, and we had a great day. I mean, and you can't see in that picture, but there was probably like 35 people that showed up that day and helped. I mean, we started at one end, took it all apart, and then I don't know how, but it all went back together.
How often do you think people use the bridge? Or how often did you use the bridge when it was, would you go every day?
Well,
Several times a day?
until I drove. Once I started driving, I lost interest in the bridge.
Yeah.
I used it every day probably till I was 10 years old to 17, every single day, 3 times a day. And my friends from this side of town would cross it to come to my side of town, or vice versa. I'd be across that bridge at least 3 or 4 times, maybe on the weekend 6 times, every single day. Now,
I think I used it until it wasn't there anymore. Every dog I had, we walked around, we went down there, we went over the bridge, we come back again.
So that's at least, what, 2 to 4 times a day with the dogs?
A couple of times,
Yeah.
with the kids, whatever, or the dog would run away and I'd have to. Yeah. But no, we use the bridge a lot. My kids always use the bridge, Brian, my son Brian, just until there was no more bridge, if he went to the Fernwood and he didn't want to drive home.
Safe way.
He would just walk across the swinging bridge and come up the hill and he'd go home. He didn't have to worry about it. That was even as an older adult, too.
And just for the record, it did get trickier on the way home.
Are there any questions that people have? Yeah.
I have a question, like to move forward faster, My question is what you learned from the past festival, and to make it easy, I give an example, macro, Verrazano Bridge. So what thing you consider when you plan a bridge, So it doesn't have to be the same mistakes in the past.
In other words, how do we go so it doesn't get flooded and washed out?
I mean, for how long you want to build it? For 2 years, for 5 years, for 100 years? What thing you consider when you plan the bridge? So there are a lot of factors, make sure this time it's no mistake.
Well, I got to tell you, when I did the paper and I read about the bridges, the previous ones being washed out, I couldn't for the life of me, and living there and looking at this bridge, I can't for the life of me figure out how it would get washed out until I saw that storm, and I never saw the water get that. I can't believe it gets that high. So I don't know how you would plan against that, because obviously it happens more often than you would think. You're not going to stop that from happening. The only way you could maybe protect the bridge would be to go higher, and I don't.
It's a good plan. You can last it for 200 years.
If the next bridge lasts for 82 years, we're all gonna be dead anyway. Let them worry about it.
What is the benefit?
Good thinking.
Maybe every 100
Really?
years, every 80 years, you need a project to pull the community together.
Maybe so.
So what the heck?
And then, Ron, you had a question? Or comment?
More of a statement, and when the bridge went down the last time, what we did is, Palenville the hamlet, a number of the board of directors, we were doing different projects as to do it legally, so we would have the homeowners protected, because that was a big issue at the time. Trash, what we would do, that was a big issue at the time. And we also had a person come in, an engineer, a local engineer, come in and come with a couple of different plans for 2 or 3 different price values. The most expensive, which deals with this question, was he came up with the idea of you actually build a bridge where you can actually raise it. So when we know there's these floods coming, I mean, you come in and you can have the town or whoever would actually either raise the bridge or maneuver it in such a way as to make it so it wouldn't be taken down. Granted, it would have been a longer process to raise the money, but we were stymied with the legal right-of-ways, the legal ability to actually just to build the bridge, and that's where we've been stuck for the last 5 years.
Yeah.
Listen, I've been coming up to Palenville since I was about 12 years old. I've fished in that stream. I've walked across that bridge many times. My brother lives on Pennsylvania Avenue, and now I live on Stony Brook Road. That bridge and the convenience in this little town is what brought me here. And if that bridge doesn't go back up there, you're going to feel the effects of it. Because take a look around you. There ain't much here. It's going away. If you don't keep it here, if you don't do something about it, it's going to be gone. And you're going to be exactly what you are. That street light. That's it.
What, in particular, where were you going when you crossed the bridge, and your brother? What was?
I just always was on the bridge. I mean, we fished that stream. We'd cross the bridge all the time to get to side. I swam under that bridge. I spent teenage years underneath that bridge and on that bridge. I mean, all my life I've been on that bridge. Part of the bringing me up here was the uniqueness of that little bridge in this little hamlet. But my saying is, if you keep losing little stuff like that, the unique stuff, you ain't gonna have nothing here.
I too knew the bridge when I was younger. We moved up here from Brooklyn, and prior to that, we had friends that we had met in Palenville, the Lynn schools, who owned the Circle W prior to your owning it. And we used to like to go over that bridge, just go swimming and hang out for the day and, you know, do all kinds of things. It was wonderful. It was really wonderful. And after we moved here in 1972, it became one of the spots where we would bring family to, because it had a charm about it that you did not know anywhere else. It was really a wonderful place to be. And I was telling him, I just have to share the story. I have an aunt, and I think of her every time I think of the bridge, because she had Parkinson's disease, and a new medication had come out, and she had taken it. And for the first time, she was able to walk on her own, and we took her there. And I can still see her standing in the middle of the bridge saying, "Look what I can do." And it was wonderful. It was really wonderful. It was a great place.
That's great.
And everybody's memories are on this as well.
Well, it's good that we're touching on kind of it being the soul of the town, and that people think of that, and they think of Palenville with the bridge. Go ahead.
But it's not only the bridge, it's the whole valley, because, this is the beauty. You see, like if you go on Hudson, you go in the city, everybody has access to the river. It's point of view, you can fish, you can watch. But here, it's some people, they take advantage, and it's private. This is a state, it can be private if people cannot fish, they cannot enjoy. That is how you lose the tourists, the hiking, so that is the main point, to let the people enjoy the beauty of the nature. You cannot keep it, for yourself. Just few people, they control everything. That is not the right thing.
If it gets to the point where financing is of interest, which, I guess it always is, but Senator Gillibrand has a local representative up in Albany, and I talked to him a little bit about the Palenville, the Hamlet organization, and there was a commitment from them to poke around for potential grants and things. So, when we get to that point, there's interest. And these stories would do nothing but, tell a very, very good story.
Absolutely. Now, can you think of any other neighbors that would have stories about the bridge being important in their family, or that, we're particularly interested in establishing that it was a road, that it was the way from this to that. And, you talk about when someone lives over here in this specific house and they have to go to the store on the other side, they need the bridge. So,
definitely,
yeah.
Richard Depew was supposed to be here tonight. I don't know what happened. I hopefully must have forgot about it.
So that would be another one there.
Yeah.
I was always told it was a right of way. That's,
Yeah.
I never knew of anything else other than that.
Well, I think, now, if I'm not mistaken, I think when Morelli, I think that was their name, the people who owned it originally, when they were selling Pine Road, they were still living, because when I moved up here in the summer of 1970, and I can still remember my that I was staying in my mother's house, but we had that old big house that I'm living in now, and I was in the little house, and I could still hear her saying, "Your breakfast is now being served." From Pine Road House. Your breakfast. I don't think that was for the next couple of. I think that was for the next couple.
Yep.
Sounds around town. That's great.
What exactly is it going to cost? The money can't be in the construction of the bridge itself. It's got to be more legalized.
Well, the number for the bridge, I believe, is around 40,000. That was the number they were looking at.
40,000.
However cheap.
I don't know.
Well, it's a structural
We did it for
thing.
about 1,500, but.
We're talking.
We did it under cover of night.
Be done, right?
How much did you say? I didn't quite hear that.
Okay, Dan?
40,000 was the figure that I heard was being discussed a couple of years ago.
That obviously is not the bridge that raised and lowered.
That is the
Yeah.
bridge that was raising and lowering.
40 grand?
Yeah, I mean,
You
that's.
mean to tell me everybody's sitting here squabbling on how you're gonna get $40,000?
No,
No.
we're not.
Oh, okay,
We're
cool,
very
man.
hopeful on that.
No,
Okay.
the main problem was prior to the bridge going down,
Right.
as the speaker, as Crane had spoken, as people came, or, no, you were mentioning, as people came up and wanted their own little piece of the valley, they made it their own little piece of the valley. So, all the land along the creek
Has been sold.
was sold. And even before the bridge going down, Palenville, the hamlet, was struggling with trying to come up with a way to make it viable for people to go up and
Wouldn't
down the
it
trail.
fall with, as for all these years of it being here, wouldn't it be just grandfathered in? Hell, everything else is grandfathered.
We were told by the town attorney, no. We had actually gone in and had hired, we had used, somebody had donated money to us, and we had gone to a conservation attorney, and they said no. What they were looking into at the time was to try to persuade people to understand that with easements, you could have tax burdens lowered. With easements, liability could be lowered. But when we got to that point, people on either side of the bridge didn't want us on the property to even to inspect. And the one person on this side of the bridge is still there. The other person has been changed to another owner, and that also got to be a problem. They didn't want us on that
I
side
don't
of the bridge.
understand how that happened. How did
So
that
kind
happen?
of where we are, all of that is why it's not 2011 and we're not slapping the bridge up now. Now it's 2016 and we're here with a really optimistic view toward looking at putting the bridge back. Where there are a lot of different ways legally to approach the new issues of the day, which are easements and paths across. And we're looking toward doing that, to where all the legal stuff would be worked out, to where everyone knows where the road is. That's part of what we're doing here tonight, is establishing some of these stories, that the road was used, that it was a path through Palenville.
Well, it's still used. I mean, the bottom line of the situation is, when it snows, you want your kids to walk down this road here and go around that way, or you want them to scoot across the bridge?
So once that's done, then we're gonna be looking at money in it. I mean, this should all be looked at tonight as one step, but it's a step toward having the bridge back for sure. Yeah.
It's not such a thing, you know, to build a bridge with $40,000. $40,000 is peanuts. So it's, you
We're
need
gonna
a
remember
good
your name.
business plan. You need a good business plan for the whole valley. There was grants for government. There were a lot of things which can be done, you know, to build this place because it's beautiful. So it's not such a thing, you know, to let it go, you know, just so easy, you know, because some people, they don't want to make a move, but it's a lot of things which can be done, you know.
We've all,
And $40,000, you would build maybe for 2-3 years, it doesn't work, you know.
well, we want that to last another 83 years maybe, instead of just 82. Any other stories that you can think of in your family? I'll go ahead and, I mean, while we're good at getting on the record, Dan and I moved here. Now we have passed our 9-year mark. And I will say, you know, we moved from Texas and we looked all over the nation. We could have lived anywhere because we're photographers. And this was it. I mean, this was exactly the spot. And part of it was that it was a real community. There are some communities surrounding that, you know, will bring you some good restaurants and some interesting things, but this was a real place, and you could tell that the bridge was in the heart of it. And I walked it every day with my dog across the bridge, on Sundays to across the bridge to go to the store. You know, we're across, of course, over here on Woodland. We'd go across the bridge, go up to the store for the newspaper and coffee, and then back across. So part of it is the past, part of it's the far past, but part of it is the day before in 2011 when the bridge was being used. Yeah.
I've been here less time actually than Jill has, but the second summer we were here and before the bridge went down, my niece was here and she has a very, very disabled child. He has CP, he's blind, and obviously can't walk. And a friend was at the house and carried him across the bridge from Mill Lane and then down into the water. And we have the most exquisite photograph of him with his feet in the water because anything sensory is so wonderful for him. And the homeowner or the landowner on this side of the creek started to make tracks to tell this friend and this child to leave. But when he saw what was happening, he turned around and went back. So that's a very happy memory from when we first came.
Anyone else? Yeah, Ron?
I can see the bridge. I used to be able to see the bridge from my home, and even after the bridge went down, there was the light, because Crane had talked about the lighting district. The light was still on, and that's on the lighting district. And the lighting district, from my understanding, what our research was, is controlled by the town. So I mean, that was public money being used to light the light even after the bridge went down this last time. So that's probably something that to tie in 1920.
So what year are you talking?
2012, 2013. I'm not sure when it was eventually down, but it was on.
The light is still up.
Yeah, I don't think it's on anymore.
Right.
Yeah.
Right, but I mean, I think the light was on.
Rich, did you think of something?
I just wanted to reflect a little on the change of the community between the different time periods. I mean, when that bridge was built in the many versions that it was, this was a tourist town, and there was hotels served the town, but it was always, and you know, Terry will back me up on this, this was always an artist town. This was an artist colony. We don't brag about it like some of the other towns next door, but we got pretty good credentials as far as an artist community here. And that hasn't changed. The artists have shifted, the neighborhoods have shifted, the people coming in have shifted. Some people come, some people go. But like you said about yourself, people are drawn to this, whether it was a magnet that was on that bridge. I've always blamed it on the mountain because I've moved away several times and I keep getting pulled back, and I believe there's some force in the mountain that pulls me back.
I was raised here as a kid, just in the summer with my grandparents when I was an infant. This is where my heart was. I was never happy until I could look back up there and remember what.
Right.
Never wanted to be anyplace else.
So
I don't know what it is.
yeah, whatever the secret power is,
Yeah, it does.
it
does
doesn't.
have some kind of a power with it.
We
really.
can't explain it, but it calls us back,
So
and
true. Yep.
this goddamn bridge has been in my mind for 30 years. I did that paper as like a quickie thing, and it's still coming back 20 years later. I'm like getting calls about it. It's like, oh my God. But the bridge, everybody that comes to town or came to town went to see that bridge. Whether you lived here, whether you visited, everybody said, you gotta see this bridge. So
My grandmother lived in Catskill Avenue in 1931. They bought their house, so they rented one for a while. And she always said that. Anybody who came to visit, that's what they knew about the swinging bridge. Wherever they came from, they knew about the swinging bridge. And they wanted to go, they wanted to go and see it. They had to take them out. Yeah, I don't know.
If you want to build something, or if you want to bring something in the spot, what is the first thing you build?
What's the first thing, what?
What is the first thing you build? If you don't have the infrastructure, then what do you do?
Well, that's where we are now, is sorting out a little
It's
bit
not
of the
an
legal stuff.
infrastructure, you know,
Yeah.
you cannot build anything.
Yeah.
right now, what we need is legal permission to be on that property without getting arrested or chased off. Yes.
I dare say if you had the legal authority to go onto the property and do it, then I think that you would find that a bridge would go up very quickly. Money's
I
gonna
know a
show
couple
up.
guys that could help.
Everything would fall.
Nowhere in the history of that whole bridge from beginning of time that there's an easement or a right of way or something written down about that. That's hard for me to believe.
I believe
I
there is.
believe there was something in that deed originally when he bought that he knew, but I don't know that for sure.
I mean, at the time, I just want to come clean right now. At the time I did my paper, this was pre-Google, pre-internet. It would have made it a lot easier. I had to go old school. I had to go to the library. I had to dig through books. I actually interviewed a lot of the older residents at the time.
Wow. That's
Yeah, and I don't actually think any of those people are still alive. But at the time, that was the way to get the history, just like we're doing now. That was the way to get the history of the town, is through the living older people.
Now, I kind of like that stopping point about the power of the mountain pulling us all in together. Oh, we have another one? Oh, yeah, Dan.
People have to understand, it's not a rebuilding of the bridge, it's a repair of the bridge.
Right.
Rebuilding is a whole nother structure. You have to pin things into the, as any builder here knows, you have to do different foundation work. Right now, what's there is called the spread footing. The one side that's still up, at one point, probably the 70s, they put concrete around the stone that's there, the dry lake. The reason the other side came down on Pine Grove is because it was always a dry lake foundation, just stone, and it was eroding year after year, and when the trees came down, that's what knocked that over. So to repair it, the $40,000 price tag, there's going to be 44 yards of concrete on the abutment that's in the creek to redo that. And at this point, Gary Harvey has Creighton and Manning, which is an engineering firm up in Albany, which have also been they're the engineering firm that's been retained to do the sidewalks. They did pro bono, they did a whole draw up of the bridge. So it's all legal to redo it. We also have a contractor who did a lot of bridge work that has been willing to come in and rebuild the bridge for the cost of materials. And that's where the $40,000 price tag comes in. The bridge they were talking about with the crank up, that Catterskill Engineering proposed, there was a $300,000 price tag. So that's why there's a repair and it's not a rebuild, because the price tag is just gonna go up. If anybody's built anything from scratch in this town with code enforcement, you'll know what you have to go through just to put a foundation in. How much they hem and pour over if you hit bedrock, you know, so that's where we're at with the bridge.
Good. That's a nice summary. Thank you to you guys on the panel. Did you have anything else you wanted to add? Did you think of anything else? Well, okay. If all of you that have any kind of history at all with the bridge, think about what you know. Think about who you know. We're looking for people who've used it in a public way. We're looking for stories about how often people used it, and then how far back it's been used as a thoroughfare. So it doesn't have to stop here tonight. We're still looking for more input. Donna, you sure were quiet for all that you know about it.
Yeah, you should know.
I think maybe you can dig up a few little stories for us. So that's where we are.
You know, somebody could just go talk to Jody Edwards.
Yeah.
I'm sure she knows what she's.
I think she was one of the sources that I
Probably
used.
was. She's
good.
She probably could give a lot of information. She's deaf, but she still has all her fascinating.
Yeah, Josie was 8 when the bridge was built.
Yeah. What?
Josie moved into her house in 1926.
Yeah.
The old Myrtle Villa.
Yeah. She would know a lot.
Well, thanks everyone.
Good job.